Hello, I'm Carl, and I'm going to show you in this video how to vignette a photograph. Vignetting is simply just darkening the edges of a photograph that draws your eye to the subject or the brighter part of the photograph. Now, the first thing we need to do once you have your photograph up in Photoshop is to create a blank layer above your background layer. If you come down below here and you hover over these, they will tell you what they are, and this is create a new layer. So that's what we want to do. We want to create a layer above that. This gives you a blank layer. Come up here, get your Marquee tool. Now, as with all these tools up here, when you see this little tick mark down at the lower right hand corner, that means there are tools underneath it. If the rectangle had been selected, we would just come up here, right click, and drop down here to the Marquee, select it, and then we have the Marquee tool. Now, the second thing we need to do is the feather. We want a very gradual fade of this edge of the vignette, so we want the feather up to 250. That's just as high as you can go. Now, anytime you hover over a name like this of an option or a tool and you see this little hand with the finger and the double arrows, that means it's a scrubby slider. You just click and hold and you can change your numbers. You don't have to go to the keyboard. Very slick. Just grab up here, drag down, and that looks about right. And this is anybody's guess on how you want to do it. It's different with different pictures. Now we have the inside of this circle selected, but we want the outside of it selected. So while we're in this circle, right click and then do select inverse. Now you can tell by the marching ants this whole outside area is selected, the inside area is protected. Somewhat. It's protected because, and I say somewhat because we do have the feather set to 250, so there's going to be some bleeding there, but that's what we want. So now we come down and we pick our color. We want pure black. If you click on these little defaults, this gives you pure black and pure white. No matter what colors are down here, if you click on that, you will get pure black and pure white. And black is default on top. That's your foreground. Your foreground is always the color that you're currently using. And that's what we want. Then we go up here and we get our paint bucket and the opacity. Again, we got a scrubby slider, so let's take this one up to about 80%, 82. That's good enough, and we just go in the area we have selected and click to dump. Now you have to have this on its own blank layer or it will not dump correctly. If you dump it on a layer with information on it, it gets all funky looking. So now we have this vignette. Let's get rid of our marching ants. Let's go back up to our elliptical marquee, click it, come over back over here, and then right click and then choose deselect. Now we have a vignette on our photograph, but we are not done because some of that vignette has probably spilled over onto her face, and I want to do a little cleanup and make it look a little cooler. So what we have to do, come back over here to our layers palette, and we want to drop down here and we want to give it a mask. So we do that. We've created a layer mask. So what we need to do, get our paintbrush, take this up to 100% on our opacity. We already have black selected because we wanted to make sure, and it did brighten up her face just a little bit, so some of that did spill over on her face. Now let's take our opacity back down to 36. That's good. And just start clicking and erasing, and this is where just personal preference comes in. What you're trying to do is simulate natural light fall off. Now, especially if you're doing a competition print, you really want to try to simulate the light fall off. If you're just doing this for yourself, you can do anything you want, but the closer you get this to natural light fall off, the better it's really going to look. Now that looks pretty good, but let's say I think this is just a little bright right down here. Let's switch this to white. We'd click our little toggle. Now we're going to undo. It's kind of what the white does. It's kind of just like puts it back. So that did it a little bit and a little more, and actually I decide that's better if it's a little brighter. So switch it back and erase it back off there. And again, I am just clicking like a madman. and painting, and there you go. There's a nice easy vignette, and look how that really changes the mood of a photograph. That is pretty cool, and that's very easy to do. And it is just that simple.